How every major Viking leader actually died. Ragnar Lothbrok. Even today, historians can't agree if Ragnar was a real single person or a mix of multiple Viking chiefs, embellished over time into a mythic figure. But one thing all the sagas agree on: how he died. Around 865 CE, Ragnar led a raid on Northumbria, and it went horribly wrong. He was captured by King Ella, who chose a brutal execution, the Snake Pit. Ragnar was thrown alive into a cold stone chamber filled with writhing, poisonous snakes. According to the Ragnar saga, he didn't beg for mercy, he laughed. His last words were said to curse Ella directly, vowing that his sons would come to avenge him. Whether that's 100% true or not, this death scene became one of the most retold in Nordic literature, a defiant warrior mocking his executioner with his last breath. It's the stuff of legend, and it's easy to see why Ragnar's name still lives on. Next up, Ivar the Boneless, one of the most feared Viking warlords of the 9th century. Just hearing his nickname was enough to strike fear into the hearts of anyone who crossed his path. Even today, historians argue about what boneless really means. Some say it referred to extreme flexibility, others a bone disease, and some think it's something else entirely. But one thing's for sure, it worked. Ivar became a powerful ruler of Dublin, with Irish historians describing him as a king who wielded huge influence, dominating both Nordic and Irish politics in the region. But his death, recorded by the Steffi on December 8th, is surprisingly underwhelming for someone with his reputation. Unlike Ragnar, Ivar didn't die in battle or a dramatic execution. He reportedly passed away from a sudden illness. No legend writers bothered to give him a heroic last stand. The man who made kings tremble died quietly in bed, and somehow that silence makes his end even more haunting. Now, let's talk about Burned Ironside, or Baron Ironside as some call him, who led one of the ballsiest Viking operations in history. Sometime around 859-860 CE, he and his partner Sten sailed a fleet deep into the Mediterranean, plundering Spain, North Africa, and Italy along the way. They even sacked a city they thought was Rome. Turns out it was just Luna, a mistake that probably stung pretty bad. After years of epic raids and reportedly becoming King of Sweden, Bern's end was almost a joke compared to his career. According to tradition, he died of old age, no battlefield glory, no ambush, no dramatic betrayal. The man who sailed longships all the way to the Mediterranean and back just grew old and faded away. Historians note that much of Bern's life story comes from Icelandic sagas, which don't have much independent proof, but the Mediterranean raids are widely considered credible. To this day, he's one of the few great Viking leaders who clearly died in his bed. Then there's Rollo of Normandy. In his early years, Rollo spent his time terrorizing the Franks so much that Frankish King Charles the Simple decided it was easier to give him land than keep fighting him. Thanks to the Treaty of St. Clair-sur-Epte in 911 CE, Rollo became the first ruler of Normandy, all in exchange for converting to Christianity and swearing to defend the region. But according to contemporary writer Dudo of St. Quentin, Rollo never fully gave up his old Viking ways. Shortly before his death, he reportedly decided to sacrifice 100 Christian prisoners to the Norse gods, trying to cover his bases between his new faith and his old pagan roots. He died between 927 and 930 CE of old age, a pagan raider turned Christian duke who never quite knew which side of the afterlife he wanted to end up on. Little did he know, his descendants would reshape European history in ways he could never have imagined from his longship. Next, Eric Bloodaxe. Eric made a name for himself by killing several of his own brothers to seize the Norwegian throne after his father Harald died. According to the Heimskringla saga, he and his wife were responsible for the deaths of 5 of his half-brothers. Later he ruled as King of York, but his final end came in 940 CE at the Battle of Stainmore, fought in the bleak moorland hills on the border of modern-day Cumbria, Durham, and North Yorkshire. Eric was killed there, and his death is attributed to treason. An agent of Count Oswald of Bamberg, named Macius, ambushed him. Some sources say Oswald himself ordered the hit. The man who murdered his way to the throne was brought down by someone else's betrayal, cut down in a narrow pass between Heather and Grey Rock. It's a tragic end for a man who craved power above all else. Now, Harold Bluetooth, yes, the one Bluetooth technology is named after. Harold united the Danish tribes, expanded his influence into Norway, and oversaw the Christianization of Denmark. His achievements are still immortalized today on the famous Jelling stones in Jutland. But his downfall came from within his own family. His son, Sweyn Forkbeard, led a rebellion against him, and Harold was wounded in the battle. He fled Denmark entirely and died in exile in Pomerania, modern-day Poland, around 986 CE, far from the kingdom he'd spent his life building. He succumbed to his wounds on foreign soil, abandoned by his own people for the sake of his own son. And as a fun side note, the Bluetooth wireless technology we use every day is named after him, and its logo combines his runic initials, something that would probably confuse him if he were alive today. Let's move on to Leif Erikson, the famous Viking explorer. Leif sailed west from Greenland and reached a land that's almost certainly the coast of North America, confirmed by the Norse archaeological site at Los Olmedos in Newfoundland, Canada. He converted to Christianity almost 500 years before Columbus and brought the faith to Greenland on his mother's advice. Then, according to legend, he just disappeared. No one knows exactly when he died. Estimates range around the year 1020 CE, but there's no detailed record of his final moments. The man who set foot on a continent Europe wouldn't officially know about for 5 centuries died quietly, with no dramatic saga to tell his tale. The sagas, which loved a good dramatic death, had nothing to say about Leif. He just stopped showing up. The greatest explorer of the Viking Age vanished without a trace, unknown to the world he'd discovered. Next, Olaf Haraldsson, also known as Saint Olaf. Olaf converted Norway to Christianity using a mix of genuine belief and brute force. Depending on who you asked back then, he was either a saint or a tyrant. A coalition of Norwegian tribal chiefs, opposed to his rule, banded together, deposed him, and expelled him from his own kingdom. Olaf tried to reclaim the throne, but he was killed on the 29th of July 1030 CE at the Battle of Stiklestad, vastly outnumbered by his former subjects. According to Snorri Sturluson's Heimskringla, written about 2 centuries later, Olaf was hit by a spear, a sword, and an axe, all at the same time, 3 wounds that seemed to mirror martyrdom. He was canonized just a year after his death, and Nidaros, modern-day Trondheim, was built over his grave, becoming one of the great pilgrimage sites of medieval Europe. It's a tragic twist. Norway's patron saint was killed by his own people. Now Canute the Great, widely regarded as the most powerful Viking ruler in history. At the height of his power, he controlled England, Denmark, Norway, and parts of Sweden, building a North Sea empire without losing a single major battle. He's famous for the story of the tides, which is almost always misunderstood. He ordered the waves to stop, not because he thought he could control them, but to prove to his flattering courtiers that even kings have limits. Canute died on the 12th of November, 1035 CE, in Shaftesbury, likely from illness, possibly kidney disease, though the exact cause is unclear. He was around 40 years old, far too young for someone of his stature. His empire collapsed almost immediately after his death, divided among his sons, who turned on each other and wiped each other out within a few years. The man who held England, Denmark, and Norway in his fist left nothing lasting. He was buried in Winchester Cathedral, and his North Sea empire was buried with him. Last but not least, Harald Hardrada, considered by many historians to be the last great Viking chief, his death is seen as the symbolic end of the Viking Age. Before ascending the Norwegian throne, he served as a Varangian guard for the Byzantine emperor, fought in Russia, the Mediterranean, and North Africa, and amassed enough wealth and prestige to make any scribe jealous. In 1066 CE, he invaded England, defeating the English at the Battle of Fulford Gate. But just 5 days later, he was caught completely off guard. King Harold Godwinson marched his army north at a breakneck pace and attacked the Vikings at Stamford Bridge on the 25th of September 1066. Many of the Norse warriors were unprepared, reportedly even without armor. Harold Hardrada was killed by an arrow to the throat, according to accounts. His invasion fleet had arrived with 300 ships. It took the survivors just 24 ships to sail back home. We'll wrap up with William the Conqueror, who was descended from Nordic settlers who'd received land in France a generation earlier. By 1066, he turned his inherited duchy into a launching pad for one of the most pivotal campaigns in European history, the Battle of Hastings. He conquered England, completely transforming the country and building one of the most impressive kingdoms of medieval Europe. But his death was anything but dignified. During the siege of Mantes, William either fell ill or was injured by the pommel of his saddle, suffering severe internal injuries. He died slowly over several weeks in Rouen on the 9th of September 1087 CE. According to the chronicler Orderic Vitalis, his servants fled his deathbed to secure their own fortunes, leaving the king largely unattended. When his bloated body was finally forced into his stone sarcophagus in Caen, it reportedly burst. The conqueror of England received one of the least dignified burials in monarchical history. From snake pits to quiet deaths in bed, from betrayal to martyrdom, these Viking leaders' final moments tell us just as much about their lives as their greatest victories. Let us know in the comments which death surprised you the most, and if you want more Viking history deep dives, hit that subscribe button.